Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1 for this, our reactions to the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the final race of the year. It feels like only yesterday we were sat talking about the Bahrain Grand Prix and how the season will plan out, and here we are now, the final one. Before we get into all of it, remember to like and subscribe, and a huge shout out to our members, Dakota, the Joyous Jane, Robin Myers, Cinnamon Strudel, and our newest member, Jack Hawk. So if you want to become a member, there is a link in the description. You get to have videos early, you get to see behind the scenes stuff, you get your video shouts outs. All of that is in the description for you. And just before we go into the race itself, just want to say, I've said it a few times before, but firstly, thank you very much for watching the channel this season. I mean, the growth that the channel has had over the 2024 season has been insane, so thank you very much for watching. But also, secondly, just because the F1 season's over, that does not mean that there's going to be no more videos here, because there are going to be videos every single week until the 2025 testing sessions start, and then we'll be back on the 2025 season as it is. So tomorrow there will be driver ratings for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, but this Friday there will be the driver ratings for the entire season. So we give each driver a score between 1 and 10. We're going to add up all of those scores and then find out who came out on top, who is our driver of the year. That'll be out on Friday. And now, if I remember correctly, because I have a spreadsheet which tracks all of this, there were 2 drivers that went into the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix on equal points on my driver ratings, and they were 1 and 2. So it's close. It's close for driver of the year this year for Stop and Go F1. So that's all coming in the next week. But then from there onwards, there'll be a video at least every Friday. News videos every Saturday when there's something to talk about. If there's breaking news, which I suspect there will be relatively soon, especially around the Sergio Perez situation, we'll be here as soon as we can. So subscribe for all that. That's all the admin out of the way. Let's talk about this race, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. So Lando Norris on pole position, Oscar Piastri alongside, McLaren front row lockout. A few changes to the grid before we get started. Nico Hülkenberg was given a free-place grid penalty for overtaking in the pit exit, so he was dropped down. I saw a lot of people going, but Max Verstappen does that all the time. It's like, well, the rule isn't you're not allowed to do it. The rule is don't do it in Abu Dhabi because there's a tunnel, and if you crash, we really don't know what we're going to do. So it's an exclusive rule for Abu Dhabi. Maybe other tracks have it, but it's an exclusive rule here. It's not favoritism or hatred or whatever. So just clear that up immediately. A few more penalties. Gearbox penalties for both Albon and Colapinto. 5-place penalties for them. Albon dropped down to 18th, Colapinto to 20th. Battery change for Charles Leclerc sees him drop 10 places. He starts from 19th place. On the tyres, Lewis Hamilton starts his final race for Mercedes on the hard tyres, whereas everyone else is on the mediums, and lights out and away we go. And immediately there is a collision between Max Verstappen and, I've written here, Max and Verstappen. But it was Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri into turn 1. Lando Norris able to take the lead relatively easily and go off from there. Now on the Max Piastri crash, personally, I felt it was just your prototypical turn 1 racing incident. I mean, you see this kind of thing all the time. Max went for a dive bomb down the inside. He had to take a wider line due to the dive bomb. Piastri was there. He hit him. They both went to the back of the grid. What Martin Brundle said was that apparently the stewards are clamping down on any kind of collisions now to hand out more and more penalties. I think the FIA are tired of being called soft. So this eventually did lead to Max Verstappen getting a 10-second penalty. As I said, I think a bit harsh. I think personally it was a racing incident, but also I remembered the F1 Academy race from this morning. And if you missed that, there is a video here on the channel for it, and also for the F2, which was incredible. So 2 videos there for you once you finish this one. There was a very similar, basically shot-for-shot remake in the F1 Academy between Dorian Pan and Chloe Chambers. Chambers in the Verstappen role, and Chambers got the exact same penalty. And at the time in the F1 Academy, I thought that was a bit harsh. And here, I think again, it is a bit harsh, but there you go. It is what it is. Max Verstappen, the man who apparently gets away with murder and never receives a penalty, receives yet another penalty. 10 seconds this time. So, Further back, though, Sergio Perez has spun and Valtteri Bottas has damage. Perez is out of the race on lap 2. We saw the two of them collide here. I'm still not entirely sure what happened because so much was happening into turn 6 at this point of the race. It looked like Magnussen went for a big old dive bomb down the inside, made that work, and then Bottas and Perez just happened to be on the same part of the track. 2 into 1 didn't go, and Bottas hit Perez, spun him round. Perez has said afterwards in an interview that he felt like there was something wrong anyway, so maybe there was something wrong, maybe not, but Perez is out on lap 2, and, realistically, that could be the end of Sergio Perez's career, which is a shame to say, because Perez is one of those guys who has been one of my favourites for a while. Like, in his Force India days, in his Sauber days back in 2012, my God, he was incredible. And then when he first joined Red Bull, I was so happy for him, and he did so well. It's really a bad ending to Perez's career, and I feel like, F1's getting more and more popular all the time. There will be fans who will only ever know Perez how he's been this season or last season, and they'll go, oh, he was rubbish. But it's like, no. Peak Perez was incredible. In the Force India, in the Racing Point, in the Sauber, he was amazing. So if this is the end of Sergio Perez's career, I hope it's not. I don't think he should be in the Red Bull, but I would like to see him come back in some kind of midfield car where he drives his best. If Cadillac need a driver, Sergio Perez is available. But yeah, I hope he's okay, because I imagine this year has been incredibly tough for him with the scrutiny he's come under. Rightfully, I must say, because he has not driven well, so he deserves to have people say he hasn't driven well. But I imagine it must be incredibly difficult. And if this is the end, I hope he gets some kind of release from that. I imagine we'll hear from it relatively soon. We do get a virtual safety car from here. It doesn't last too long. The big gainer, though, my goodness, was Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc starting down in 19th place. He's up to 8th by the end of this lap. 11 places gained on the first lap. Charles Leclerc driving incredibly well. As for Piastri and Verstappen, after their incident, Piastri was down in 19th, Verstappen in 11th. Pierre Gasly, though, is up in P3. He was doing incredibly well, and he had a beautiful defence from George Russell. Russell trying to go for P3. Gasly able to block him at this point. When the virtual safety car did end, though, we see from Piastri's point of view, he kind of maybe locked up, outbroke himself, and went right into the back of Colapinto. Colapinto had a puncture and had to pit from there on lap 4. Piastri pits on lap 5, only for tyres, though. It doesn't change front wing or anything like that. I think he might have changed a bit of the angle of the front wing, but not the front wing entirely. It changes over to the hard tyres. This is when Verstappen's penalty comes through for 10 seconds. Coincidentally, a couple laps later, Piastri also gets a penalty for the incident with Colapinto. So they both were in that incident at the start. They both now have 10-second penalties for different reasons. Anyway, at this point, Verstappen tries to start his fight back, passing Magnussen for P8. Leclerc is still fighting through, passing Alonso for P6. There's a lovely little duel between Lawson and Hamilton for P11 on lap 11. Since Abu Dhabi has changed how their track works, we saw it multiple times throughout this race where into turn 6, into that chicane, you could get a move done, but then there's that long straight into that fast left-hander where the other guy can just come right back with the slipstream and the DRS on there. So you're seeing these beautiful duels that Abu Dhabi never had when they were on the old layout, which never really worked. But yeah, saw some great moves throughout the race here. Leclerc is now up to the top 5. He's passed Nico Hülkenberg on lap 12. George Russell still on the back of Pierre Gasly on lap 14. Gasly pits now from 3rd onto the new hards. We get a penalty for Zhou for a false start. That was 5 seconds. Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda have one of those beautiful duels we were talking about before, where Gasly gets the position into turn 6. Yuki Tsunoda comes and takes it back on the straight. Then Gasly takes it back again through the left-hander. Really, really great racing from the two of them for P8. Yuki Tsunoda then gets passed by Nico Hülkenberg a couple laps later. Hülkenberg up to 9th. Charles Leclerc pits from 4th place on lap 24. Now has to fight through again. So he passes Lawson for P7. He passes Gasly for P6. Lawson has a very, very slow stop here. It looks like they dropped the car. Initially, I thought he'd stalled, but he hadn't. What had actually happened is they put the front left on, then they dropped the car, and then the man with the wheel gun went to go tightened the wheel nut, and then Liam Lawson just drove off. And Liam Lawson's on the radio going like, guys, the tyre isn't on. So, we've seen it a few times before where the tyres aren't screwed on properly, where you see a tyre rolling down the track, and that's what I was expecting to see. We cut to Liam Lawson. He's driving at 160 miles an hour, and the left tyre is somehow just being held on by sheer willpower. It's like normally when you have someone who might not have a tyre connected, you think they go slowly. Not Liam Lawson. He doesn't follow your rules. He's just foot to the floor, getting back to the pits as soon as he can. He gets into the pits, they just tighten up the front left, and he's on his way again from there. He will get a penalty for his car being in an unsafe condition, but my God, the balls on Liam Lawson to have 3 wheels attached to his car and go, the best way to handle this is speed. And I don't know what happened to him from there, but yeah, that ruined his race. But what a moment he can tell his grandkids about. Sainz pits from P2 on lap 26. Norris then pits from the lead on lap 27. Sainz pitting a lap early did cut into Norris's lead ever so slightly. Went from 4 seconds to about, I think it was 1.5 at this point. But realistically, McLaren was just so much faster than the Ferrari all weekend. The only way I think Ferrari ever could have won this they would have needed Leclerc not to have a penalty and actually have a good qualifying. Maybe Leclerc could have done something, but Sainz was just a bit off the pace of Norris throughout this entire race. And realistically, Norris was untroubled throughout the entire race, so I don't think he was going fully for it either. So it was a very straightforward race for Lando Norris from there. George Russell pits on lap 27, and he's right behind Gasly again, revisiting their little battle. Russell gets past Gasly for P6 on lap 28. Colapinto then retires the car. Maybe it was following on from the incident with Piastri at the start, maybe not, but that could be the end of Colapinto's career. I mean, Jesus Christ, he was one of those guys who I never thought he'd actually make it to Formula One, because his junior career wasn't too stellar. But then, he's had some great races. The last few races he's had haven't been too great, but the start of his F1 career was very good. And as of right now, it looks like he will not be on the grid for 2025. There was, of course, discussions of him maybe being in the Red Bull Racing Bills, whatever they're called, team. But it looks like that is now going the way of Isaac Hadjar. But who knows, after his F2 performance today, maybe he's not in contention anymore. So maybe he fits in there, maybe not, but surely he must find a way in somewhere in 26. That's definitely one to keep an eye on as we go forward. This is when Lawson gets the penalty for the unsafe car being released in an unsafe manner. 10-second stop-and-go penalty for Liam Lawson. Very harsh. Again, the stewards have got a new penalty book, apparently, going, right, this is what this penalty is, this is what this penalty is. It's the kind of thing where it's a weird one because, it's not his fault. It's not the driver's fault, but the driver gets punished. And I feel like with that, sometimes, because there are penalties that they hand out sometimes when it's the team's fault and it's just a fine. And I wonder if that one maybe should have been just a fine, but who knows? It's a discussion for another time. Verstappen pits on lap 30. He serves his penalty and moves on to the hard tyres. Valtteri Bottas, though, has a puncture on lap 31. Looking at the replay, he completely locked up and went into the side of Kevin Magnussen. Ends Valtteri Bottas' race and ruins Magnussen's. And, of course, ends Valtteri Bottas' F1 career. Because he's another one who is out the door now. He retires the car on lap 32. That's the end of that for Valtteri Bottas. I mean, I think Bottas is this strange one where he's had actually a very good season despite scoring 0 points. And Zhou, of course, is ahead of him in the championship, as he has been all year. But Bottas, for me, has massively outperformed Zhou throughout the entire year, but that will not be reflected in the championship standing. So it's a shame that Bottas' career ends this way. Who knows, maybe a door will open for him later down the line, but at the minute, it looks like this is the end for him. But yeah, Magnussen from here had to pit, and they just kind of kept on pitting him to the soft tyres. They knew they were out at this point, so they just went, right, soft tyres and more soft tyres, and more soft tyres. And they're like, come on, Magnussen, you can get the fastest lap. That'll be your big send-off. And I think he did it in the end. So well done to Magnussen for fastest lap. Oscar Piastri pits on lap 33. He serves his penalty, goes for the hards. Lewis Hamilton pits on lap 35. Verstappen still fighting through the field, passes Alonso for P8. Then Alonso pits. Hamilton passes Gasly for P5 on lap 43. Verstappen passes Hülkenberg for P7 on lap 44. Verstappen passes Gasly for P6 on lap 46. And then Alonso passes Yuki for P10 on lap 46. Oscar Piastri then lines up Yuki Tsunoda for a move, but has a huge snap of oversteer. Nearly went in the barrier, then went the other way and went massively off wide. You know, at that point you had Norris leading from Sainz. Then Sainz had quite like a gap to Leclerc. If Piastri had been the one who'd put it in the wall that had brought out the safety car, that meant that the Ferraris could have pit and challenged Norris at the end for the Constructors' Championship. That would have been a tremendous ending, but thankfully for McLaren, it did not end that way. Piastri able to keep it on the track for the most part. Hamilton now is chasing down Russell. Remind me very much of Las Vegas, where Russell was ahead of Hamilton by quite some margin, but Hamilton was that much quicker. Now, in Las Vegas, Hamilton ran out of laps and ran out of pace towards the end. But here, it went a different way. Hamilton chasing him down lap after lap after lap. Now, Piastri does eventually get past Yuki Tsunoda for P11, but again, Yuki Tsunoda takes it back. Yuki Tsunoda having lots of battles this weekend with cars that he really shouldn't have, because a lot of people were out of place or in different pit cycles or whatever it might be. But Yuki Tsunoda holding his own against everyone, as he usually does. Piastri finally does get past him round the outside of that nice long left-hander on lap 49. That's for P11. Now on lap 53, Carlos Sainz reports that he has a puncture. He didn't, thankfully, and is able to keep on from there. Oscar Piastri then passes Albon for P10 on lap 54 of 58. Piastri now back into the top 10. And on the last lap of the race, it all kicks off, really, because Liam Lawson's out. Still not entirely sure what happened there. It looked like an engine failure, but we didn't really get much clarification on that, because we then cut to Lando Norris winning the race. But then as Lando Norris is winning the race, Lewis Hamilton passes George Russell on the last lap to take P4 in his last race for Mercedes. I still haven't seen the actual overtake because I put it in a little box and I couldn't see it, but Hamilton did get the move done. So as I said, we cross the line. Lando Norris wins the race, which secures the championship, the Constructors' Championship for McLaren. Their first Constructors' Championship since 1998. A lot of people watching this video might not have even been born in 1998. To be fair, I was only 2 years old. So it's been a long time coming for McLaren, who have had a lot of very good driver pairings and a lot of very good cars in that time since 1998. But it's finally come round, McLaren securing the championship, and a very, very dominant win for Lando Norris here on the last race of 2024. Carlos Sainz is second place in his last race for Ferrari. A good result for him. Charles Leclerc, though, driver of the day. Fantastic recovery for him from the penalty and the bad qualifying as well, to come home in third. Fantastic. Lewis Hamilton, fourth place. Another great recovery for him and a decent result on his last race as well. And you know what? I think fourth is actually the perfect place for Hamilton, because he had a little place to stop his car to celebrate the end of his career with Mercedes, but also because he was fourth and not in the top three, he didn't have to do the interviews or the podium or anything like that. He was able to just run straight to the garage and celebrate with his mechanics and his team, which is a much more fitting ending for him, ending this period of his career with Mercedes. So I think overall, that was the perfect place for Lewis to finish, really. And again, a great recovery from him. George Russell was fifth. We speak about this all the time. You put George Russell on pole, you put Lewis Hamilton in 20th, they will finish next to each other. And here it is again, Russell in fifth. Max Verstappen, from after the lap 1 incident, very anonymous race for him, really. We saw him making a few overtakes, but wasn't really a major story of the weekend. So he finishes in 6th place. And, what was really quite strange is at the end, we're having McLaren go mad because they've won the Constructors' Championship. Lewis Hamilton's having his big moment because it's the end of his time with Mercedes. And the thing is, Max Verstappen, who is the world champion of this year, who's had tremendous drives throughout this year, he was kind of just an extra in the end of the race. There was no big thing of there's the world champion. He kind of pulled along and he's just gone home. And he's going to look forward to becoming a dad. So a quiet one to end the year for Max Verstappen there. We have Pierre Gasly in P7, another good point result for him. Alpine really pulling it together for Gasly at the end of the season. Nico Hülkenberg in his last race for Haas, he finishes 8th, so good points again for him. Alonso manages to get into 9th place, so again the Aston has been dreadful, but Alonso somehow finds a way to score points. Oscar Piastri was the last point scorer in 10th place, and of course a lot going into that. Hit at the start, then he hits Colapinto, then he has the penalty himself, so a lot going against Piastri. And I also think the McLaren doesn't really work that well in dirty air. When it's in free air, it's brilliant, but as soon as it's behind someone, it really struggles. So I think Piastri, you'd think that he'd get a bit higher, but that is the weakness, I feel, of the McLaren. Albon just missing out on points in P11. Stroll was 12th. Yuki Tsunoda in 13th. Zhou Guanyu 14th. Jack Doohan's first ever F1 race ends in 15th place. Then Kevin Magnussen in his final race finishes in 16th place, but with the fastest lap. Then the DNFs are Lawson, Bottas, Colapinto and Perez. There we go. That is Formula 1 in 2024 done. We can draw a line under it now. The world champion is Max Verstappen. The Constructors' Championship goes to McLaren. Oh, wow. How are we all feeling? Let me know how you're feeling after that. It was a very, very fun season, I feel. A very, very competitive season. And sets up next year to be even more competitive. I mean, wow. You know, we've got a great McLaren team here with two great drivers, and you've got to think that Piastri can hopefully take his ability to another level next year to maybe challenge Lando a little bit more. You've got a great Ferrari team who will have Charles Leclerc there and Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton who, you know, isn't at his peak at this point, but I mean, in terms of racecraft, you see his recovery drives are fantastic. He's lost his confidence in his one-lap qualifying. If he can get back on top of that, I mean, that team of Leclerc and Hamilton will be one that will be really interesting to watch into next year. Of course, Max Verstappen is inevitable, and he is still there. If Red Bull can give him a car which is half decent, he'll be challenging for the world title, no matter how good everyone else is. And then you've got this really, really interesting Mercedes dynamic now with George Russell as that team lead, but the young up-and-coming Kimi Antonelli alongside him. I really look forward to seeing how that goes down. And there's all the other questions up and down the grid as well. You know, Jack Doohan, Ollie Behrman, Gabriel Bortoletto. There's the other rookies on the grid. We're setting up for something really, really interesting in 2025, and I cannot wait to sit here and talk to you about it come March. Is it? Late March we'll be starting in Australia, but of course testing before that. Oh, so much stuff to come. Anyway, as I said, driver ratings will be out tomorrow, the final driver ratings. Then driver ratings of the year, or whatever I'm going to call it, will be out on Friday. Then videos every single week. The advent calendar is still going every day, so subscribe for all of that. Until next time, that's it. I'm done. I will see you tomorrow. Until then, have a good one. Goodbye.